Good afternoon and welcome to the Great Lakes PAM region webinar featuring a Sanctified Art. Sanctified Art is a team of 4 artists in ministry who create multimedia resources for worshiping communities of all shapes and sizes. And today we are so fortunate to have all 4 of the founders of a Sanctified Art here with us today. Lyle Gwen Garrity, Hannah Garrity, Sarah R. Speed, and Lauren Wright Pittman. We will have a time for questions and answers at the end of their presentation. And if you'd like to put those questions and answers in the Q&A or in the chat, we will try to address those at the end of our time together. But it is our pleasure to welcome these 4 wonderful individuals that created a Sanctified Art. So welcome.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for this invitation. And it's good to see you all. We can't see your faces, but we feel your spirit. So thank you for hopping on this webinar with us today. I'm going to share my screen. And as I do, please just mind the technology for a moment. But many of us are familiar with PAM. There are 3 of us who have served as the artist for the worship and music conferences at Montreat. Hannah has served, I think, twice, right, Hannah? What years were you serving as the artist?
Yes, I was the artist in 2017, and I was a co-artist in 2020 with Ann Laird Jones.
And I think I served in the summer of 2019. And Lauren, you served, I think, in the summer of 2021. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. So we've spanned the pandemic times, haven't we?
Yes.
So we are familiar with all of you wonderful PAM folks, and it's good to connect with some of you again. So we're going to dive into an introduction of who we are, and then we're going to share a bit about our newest resources for Advent. And there's a document, hopefully you've received in the chat. It's quick links to some of the important places that can point you in the right direction to some of our Advent stuff that we're talking about today, as well as other materials that you might be interested in using in your ministry. But first off, I'll back up and just share a little bit about who we are. Sanctified Art truly is a collective, and we are a group of artists and pastors and writers and musicians, and together we create multimedia resources for ministry. We currently serve a really incredible growing community. I think about 5,000 congregations a year. Those churches are not just PCUSA, but represent a wide variety of denominations, such as Disciples of Christ, UCC, Episcopalian, Lutheran, Methodist, Baptist, a lot of the kind of mainline denominations and all the beautiful iterations of that. And a Sanctified Art really began from a dream and a vision to create resources for churches to help them integrate visual art and creativity in their worship and their spiritual practices. And so sometime in 2015, I pitched this kind of hazy vision of what that could look like to Lauren and Sarah and Hannah, because at that time, they were the people that I knew of who were discerning how to use their creative gifts in ministry. And to my great delight, they said yes. And I think they were a little surprised when, like, the next week I turned around and gave them contracts because I wanted them to know that I was serious and I meant business. And we just started creating resources that we thought could help congregations get creative for a season. And we just started it and experimented and slowly have grown over the years into this incredible community of Sanctified Art churches. And and then in 2019, Anna Strickland, who is also here with us today, joined first as our seminary intern, and then we quickly hired her for her gifts for curriculum writing and hymn writing as well. And she also helps manage some of the daily operations of our organization. So very valuable team member. So we create all different types of resources and materials, which we'll share more about soon. But ultimately, our greatest hope is to provide spiritual nourishment for church leaders in the communities that they serve. So we are currently a core creative team of 5, and we each have different roles and gifts in our collaborative work together. So we'll just take a moment to introduce who each of us are and where we're based in the world, because we're a fully remote team, and kind of what we do together in our work. So I'm the founder and creative director, and my role is pretty multifaceted. It's both steeped in creative work. I'm a visual artist and painter, and I create art as well as some of the other materials we develop, such as sermon guides and sometimes other worship art projects. And I also help try to maintain all of the operations of everything that we do. And I really think that my role is helping to bring our ideas into something real and trying to think about all the steps needed to bring those ideas forth in the world. Lauren, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Lauren Wright Pittman. I am one of the founding creative partners, and I'm the director of branding for Sanctified Art, which means that I help create the visual landscape for the bundles inspired by our themes, and I format the materials that you download and print out and use in various ways. I also create visual art and write artist reflections based on the texts that inspired the artwork. Oh, and I'm coming to you from Knoxville, Tennessee.
I can go next. I'm Sarah Speed. I serve as an associate pastor at Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church in New York City during the day. And in addition to that, I get to join this amazing team. I'm one of the founding creative partners, and my role with this team is primarily revolves around words. So for the bundles that have devotional cards, I create that content. Every bundle will have liturgy packages. I write most all of that liturgy, and then I also contribute the poems. Yeah, so that's my piece. Hannah?
Hi, I'm Hannah Garrity. I am also a founding creative partner coming to you from Richmond, Virginia. And I create visual art, artist reflections, and spend just a little bit of time compared to Lyle and Anna in our web side of things for the operations. How about you, Anna?
I'm Anna Strickland. I'm coming to you from Austin, Texas. And as Lyle mentioned, I started as an intern. And so my role has just kind of always been this like other duties as assigned, like this kind of hodgepodge of whatever is going to help us expand our capacity to serve our patron churches. So right now that looks like a lot of hymn writing and curriculum writing for children. Time to time, I've done some visual art to fill in our image licensing library, and I do a lot of the operations as well.
Thanks. Yeah, and I meant to say that I'm coming to you from Black Mountain, North Carolina, so just down the road from Montreat. If you've come to any of the Montreat worship and music conferences, I am a neighbor just down the road. So I mentioned that Sanctified Art is a collective, and that really is a true reflection of who we are these days, as it's not just us creating these materials, because for every seasonal bundle of resources that we create, once we have really determined our theme and honed our direction, we then very intentionally seek out and invite guest artists and guest writers and guest musicians to collaborate alongside us in creating those new materials. And so here are just a few of some of our recent guest contributors. I think, it varies year to year, but I think sometimes we've partnered with as many as like 10 or 12 different guest contributors over the whole year. So it's really a really rich part of the work that we do. And this really allows us to pour more wisdom and perspectives and gifts and talents into the resources that we create. A big part of our mission is to support and inspire pastoral leaders. And we do this, our hope is always to provide a wellspring. We love that image of a wellspring of content and resources and visuals and liturgies and poems and practical tools, really so that pastors and ministry leaders can focus on doing the work that they do best. What we try to do is the planning and the conceiving side of creative work, so that when we pass off a creative liturgy to you or a devotional, that you can then use that with your people for spiritual formation and worship, and you can be present in those sacred moments. And so we do this by creating cohesive materials for a whole season to hopefully inspire the many different types of creative expressions of a congregation. We follow standards of practice. We adhere to, as best we can, expansive language for God and God's people. A big core part of our hope is to create expansive and imaginative images for God and God's people, expanding imagination around the divine image. And in all of our work, we come with a real value of honesty and authenticity, that we are wrestling with scriptures and texts, and that really is the starting point for all of our work. And so we try to transmit some of that honesty and vulnerability in our visual art, our artist reflections, and all the work that we're doing. And to the best of our ability, we pursue our work through the lens of anti-oppression and anti-racism. So really, when we sum it all down, the core of what we do is we are trying to help churches reclaim art and creativity as tools for spiritual formation. So currently, our bread and butter, like the bulk of our work, is creating resources for two big liturgical seasons: Advent and Christmas, as well as Lent through Easter. And so for each of these big seasons, we craft a theme and weekly sub-themes inspired by our focal scriptures, which is sometimes the lectionary, and sometimes we do more of a theme-based series. And from there, we create resources inspired by those themes and scriptures. And so here's a glimpse of the full scope of our new Advent series, which is shaped around the question, how does a weary world rejoice? So this series provides themes and resources for 7 weeks, starting with the first Sunday in Advent all the way through Christmas and concluding with Baptism of the Lord Sunday. So I want to shift gears, because the best way to share about what our work looks like is just by diving into our kind of newest offering and the offering that's coming up, which is Advent. And so we're going to dive into sharing about this theme and some of the resources in case you're interested. And if you are interested, check the quick links document, and maybe it can be dropped in the chat one more time for those who missed it the first time. There's a link to where you can view all of these resources on our website. And if you are interested, there's a discount code for you all. There's also an infographic that's a really in-depth preview of the whole series, so you can see everything laid out there. And if you happen to be a patron of this series already, I hope this is informative for helping you think through implementation or just how to use some of these materials. So before we really dive in, this theme and series is shaped around Luke's gospel, the opening stories in Luke's gospel, and it's really exploring the necessary spiritual practice of joy. So before we share a little bit about the theme and the materials, I want to back up and share about our collaborators, those that we partnered with to create these materials. First up is Reverend C.C. Armstrong. She is the Associate Pastor of St. James Presbyterian in Charleston. And C.C. is someone that a few of us know personally, and we just think that she is really rooted in joy in how she lives her life and does her ministry. And I think she's been a guest preacher at worship and music conferences as well. So I'm sure some of y'all are familiar with her and probably know that sense of joy that she carries. And so she has written commentary for the series as our guest writer. Reverend Nicolette Peñaranda is our guest artist. She's a pastor in the ELCA, and she currently serves as the program director for African Descent Ministries for their denomination. She's also a really gifted artist, and she is the illustrator of a book called God's Holy Darkness. So if you are not aware of that, we encourage you to look it up. It's kind of designed to be a children's book, but I think it's great for adults as well, as it looks through the ways that some scriptures have been used as to perpetuate anti-Blackness in our scriptures and reframes them and reframes darkness as holiness. And so she's the illustrator for that book. And for each of our seasonal bundles, we partner with musicians and we commission them to create a theme song for the series. And so this year, our Advent theme song is crafted by John Olgan and the Chapel Church Band in collaboration with Sarah Speed. Sarah, do you want to share a little bit about how that works and tell us how the theme song has been created?
Sure. So John, pictured here, is the director of Chapel Church Music at Fifth Avenue Pres, and he and the band that lead our contemporary service just recorded an album this summer, and are incredibly talented, and we're excited to work with them. So we, Sanctified Art team, collaborated with John, and he wrote a melody that he felt like held both the weariness and the joy of this season. And so the song starts out a little bit more, somber is the wrong word, but it's more reflective. And then it ends with kind of this really big joyful outro. So it kind of grows towards joy. So John wrote the music, I wrote the lyrics, and then the band went into the studio and recorded it this August. And we have sheet music and recordings of that available for folks. So it's a fun addition to the bundle.
Yes, thanks, Sarah. If we'll see where this webinar goes. We do want to open up some time for conversation at the end, but if there is time, we will play the recording of the song for you as our conclusion for the webinar. So why don't we dive into this theme and how we developed it? Lauren, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So in our Advent series for the last couple of years, we felt led to focus on telling the story of Christ's birth and all of the important moments that lead up to it. While we, of course, appreciate the Revised Common Lectionary, the texts for Advent can skip around in time and space, and this can be confusing generally, but especially for those who haven't studied the Bible. So this year, we were inspired to hone in on the Gospel of Luke, as it places the most emphasis on Jesus' birth and the events that are leading up to it. It interweaves Christ's birth with parallel stories of Elizabeth, Zechariah, and John the Baptist. And as we looked closely at both of these birth narratives told side by side, we saw the full scope of human emotions. We saw isolation for Elizabeth, fear for many of the characters, disbelief in Zechariah and other characters as well as connection, trust, and joy. As we discuss the scriptures, we acknowledge that the Christmas season is also often filled with all of these emotions, sometimes all at the same time. Some of us experience grief and emotional dissonance in the midst of times of joy-filled carols and festivities.
So one of the questions that we often start as asking ourselves when we're brainstorming for each season is, what message do we think people will need to hear this Advent? So as we were discussing these emotional layers of the text, we started asking ourselves, what do we think people will need to hear? What will give us hope? And somewhere in that conversation, I remembered a poem that I had written, not for Sanctified Art, just for myself back in 2021. I wrote it on December 24th. And Omicron at that point was just wreaking havoc on New York City. Officials were urging people to double mask. The hospitals were overflowing every hour. I felt like I was getting another text from a church member or a friend telling me they'd tested positive. The churches in town were closing for Christmas Eve because the rates were so high. And I remember at that moment asking myself, would I be safe? Would people come to worship? Would it feel like Christmas? Once again, COVID was stealing our rituals. Once again, the city was sick. Once again, joy felt out of reach. And so I sat down at my computer and I wrote a poem called How Does a Weary World Rejoice? It was an effort to process the mixed emotions of that day. And so I read it out loud for the team in our brainstorming, and I'd like to read it for you all now. So this is how that poem went. How does a weary world rejoice? I think delayed Christmas cards count. The one with the haphazard stamps mailed 3 weeks late. I think the way you get down on all fours to be close to your dog or your cousin's baby counts. It's a holy routine. I think the way you stretch your body awake and breathe deeply when you rise counts, for that's Yahweh in your lungs. I think the extra second you spent looking at the sky last night and not being afraid to dance counts. So does giving up your seat on the subway for someone's grandfather, helping her carry the stroller up the stairs, and running to catch the man who dropped his bag in the crosswalk. Lighting candles when the sun disappears, laughing so hard others begin to stare, and pausing to look at the trees every once in a while to say, "Good job with that one, God." All definitely counts. As do mumbled prayers and children's prayers and every measure of music. So how does a weary world rejoice? I would guess soul by soul and day by day. If you ask me, I bet most all of it counts.
I clearly remember the moment that Sarah read that poem aloud for us, and we were all like, that's it. Like, that is what we need to hear. We need to hear that it all counts. We need to acknowledge the weariness that so many of us carry. And also, we need to seek daily moments of joy. And I remember it just feeling like this healing balm to honor all the ways that you can practice rejoicing in your daily life. And then we talked a really long time about joy, the emotion of joy. And we started to name that many of us resist joy, or maybe we don't know how to fully express it. Maybe we feel like we don't deserve it. I also think that there's maybe this idea that if we express joy, it will diminish someone else's sadness. Many of us also experience foreboding joy. And Brene Brown in her research says that joy is the most vulnerable of all human emotions because we worry that if we give into it, if we lean into it, then disaster will come. But joy can also be a companion to many other emotions. We can feel joy at the same time that we are experiencing grief or anticipation, anxiety, excitement, disappointment. And in fact, weariness and joy are not opposites on the spectrum. Instead, they belong together. The more you fully grieve, the more capacity you have for joy. And so as we studied the Luke scriptures, we discovered that there were lots of themes of joy and awe and wonder in these miraculous birth stories. And they were all coexisting alongside shock and confusion and fear. And yet, this gospel really emphasizes that Jesus is born, and it is good news for all people.
And then as we began to shape our series and flesh it out with different sub-themes, we decided that for each week, we would respond to our theme question with a we statement, because joy is deeply relational and rooted in the fact that we belong to God. So as you move through the series, you'll see sub-themes like we find joy in connection, we allow ourselves to be amazed, we sing stories of hope, we root ourselves in ritual, we make room, we trust our belovedness. And so we hope that these weekly affirmations can serve as tools for practicing joy in your day-to-day lives.
And so this Advent, we invite you to join us as we hold space for our weariness and our joy. Let us seek a thrill of hope in our hurting world. Let us welcome joy, even if, like the prophet Isaiah, we cry out for comfort. In this weary world, may we find many ways to rejoice.
So, as we mentioned, we like to create comprehensive, cohesive materials for a whole season. So, the way we package that is in a large bundle. This Advent series has a bundle of 12 resources. We also have some free supplements and bonuses because we have this sort of wellspring abundance mindset, and we really want our patrons to feel that abundance and feel like they have so many creative possibilities for the season that are deeply meaningful. And so we're going to try to briefly give you a rundown of all of the resources that are in this bundle, and this is a pretty good reflection of what we typically shape for a seasonal bundle. For each bundle, we try to think intentionally about what resources might be particular for that season or for that theme, but many of these resources you'll see in our bundles. So first of all, I'll share about our devotional booklet. This is designed to walk you through weekly readings throughout the whole season, from Advent through the end of the Christmas season. It includes poems by Sarah, original hymns written to familiar Christmas tunes. Those are written by Anna that reflect our weekly themes. So fresh words for familiar tunes, which is really nice. It includes the commentary that Cece wrote, some reflection prompts, some journaling prompts, as well as all of the art that we've created and our artist reflections. So this is where we really try to feature a lot of the main content in our whole bundle so that you can print this out and pass it out to all of your congregation members. I'm sorry, my microphone is falling. We also craft sermon planning guides, and this is really designed for preachers, worship planners, and it walks through all of the weeks in the series and all the weekly themes and scriptures, and it provides some theme connections and guiding questions for text interpretation. It also has some further reading and research possibilities, so outside books that maybe informed our process and some of our thinking around the series, other podcasts or articles that could help provide inspiration as you are writing sermons and shaping your message from week to week. Sarah, do you want to share about the words for worship and what that is?
Sure. The words for worship are liturgy for your Sunday service, and it can vary some depending on the bundle, but it usually always includes a call to worship, a prayer of confession, affirmation of faith, prayer for illumination, some of those pieces. There's usually a couple of table liturgies for communion, but for the Advent bundle, we always also include a candle lighting liturgy. And so you'll see that in these as well. And my hope is that you can print and use these in your worship service as you need it, or you can use this as a creative springboard to write and tweak liturgy that fits well for your congregation. So,
Hannah, will you share about our banner designs and how you might use them?
Sure. So this design ties together the logo that Lauren designed, and Lyle weighs in on the creative design process, and it also ties in the meaning patterns through the full season. And so one of the ways that this could be used could be a paper cutout as the front of your communion table or on the front of the pulpit. That would be super tiny. And so it might be a little complicated, and we have a printable solution that might work better in that space in your congregation. This could also be a single vertical banner that hangs. You could double cut it and hang it on either side of your congregation's space. Another option would be to split it up on multiple pieces if you wanted to make it really big in your space. I could see it working well as a 3-piece image, but it has all the meaning that represents the season, so it ties in well in the patterns, and the artist statement explains to your congregation what they're looking at.
Yes. And we love the paper lace, and also you could project trace it and paint it. That's another more maybe like kid or youth friendly option as well.
Yeah, and that's another good point, that you can bring people in, the congregation in to cut. People cut one piece and then they're standing in the space on a Sunday morning pointing it out to other people. And so there's a real sense of connection, even if you just recruit somebody to cut one little space. It works really well.
Yes, definitely. The collective ownership of a community art project is really valuable for sure. So for every new bundle, we create a collection of original visual art inspired by all of the focal scriptures. So we've created, alongside our guest artist, Nick, there are 4 of us artists who contributed work for this particular Advent series inspired by our focal scriptures, which is primarily the stories in Luke's Gospel, chapters 1 through 3. So in addition to each image, we also include artist statements and a Visio Divina guide, which is a practice for contemplation, which we'll actually walk you through in just a few minutes. Lauren, do you want to share what the branding bundle is and how it could be used?
Sure. So I do my best to package the branding bundle with all the files I think you'll need in order to share this theme with your congregation and beyond your congregation and your community. That includes logo files that have variations in this bundle for light text on a darker background and dark text on a light background. It includes slide graphics if you're projecting during worship that you can use to share the theme and sub-themes for the week. Also backgrounds featuring Lyle's photography that she hand painted and then photographed. It's beautiful, and it incorporates some of the twinkling stars. There's other design elements that we've called joy bursts and weary ripples that are shown in the logo, the simplified line work that you can use. And then there's a branding story that kind of tells about the branding and how it came to be. It tells you what the typography is, so where you can get the fonts for the bundle to use, and also suggestions for how to use the files that are included in the bundle. So the hope is to be able to help resource you if you don't have a full design team at your disposal. Hopefully you have the files to move forward.
Sarah, as our poet, tell us about the poem collection.
So for every week of the bundle, we have the sub themes, which Anna talked about earlier. And so I have written a poem for that sub theme. And so my hope is that these could be used as an opening or closing prayer of a small group, as opening words for worship, as a devotional tool. My young adults at my church have used them as journal prompts to write their own poems, or as the base for blackout poetry. So there's lots of creative ways to engage with these, but there is, for every single week and sub theme, there is a poem at your availability.
Yeah, and sometimes you craft like a special liturgy for a particular season, and we've really wanted to honor that a lot of churches have a tradition of hosting a longest night service for the Christmas season, or a blue Christmas service. So Sarah, share about the liturgy for the weary that you crafted.
I don't really remember much about this. I created
Okay,
it
I can share about it if you want.
ago.
We did create it back in April, I think. April and May.
Yeah, I wish I could say more, except for wow, I'll let you jump in if you have details that you want to lift up about this. But we just recognize that Blue Christmas is not something we have offered in every single bundle. It is something that often gets requested every single year. And as we were coming to this theme, talking about weariness and joy, it felt like this was a year where we really needed to carve out some of that space. And so this is a creative service that uses a couple of different ways to engage. And my hope is that people could look at this could use this template to their convenience. You'll see here in this photo specifically, it talks about other ways that you could offer reflection around the word that is not just your typical sermon homily moment, but some other creative ways, which I hope if you are a weary church worker and you're trying to write a million other Advent sermons, that this order of worship would be a relief to you and would give you some creative room to breathe. But of course, it's just a template. And so you can add to it, take the pieces that you want. Lyle, is there anything you want to lift up specifically from this liturgy, since I remember almost nothing about it?
Well, it is lovely. Yes, I think one of the things we've discussed over the years is that sometimes those who are in the midst of kind of the grief that sometimes the holidays will trigger may not necessarily be present to a full sermon and having that sort of auditory message. And so we like to think about different ways to engage folks in a sacred space. And so Sarah's really good at thinking about tangible ways to pray. So this liturgy includes writing on little paper moons, and you could add this little like moon display. And we just really wanted to carve out some space for those who feel the weight and the weariness. So this could be a longest night service on the solstice, or it could be a lot of folks this year are starting Advent like a week early, because Advent, the fourth Sunday of Advent, is also Christmas Eve. So you could even use this liturgy for your Sunday service to start the Advent season, because we are starting by acknowledging the weariness that we carry. Anna has shaped some really incredible children's curriculum with a pageant. So Anna, can you give us a brief rundown of all of the things that are included in that resource?
Sure. First, I want to lift up that Sarah wrote both an individual version of that liturgy and a communal version. So there is one that you can do like at home or send home with people, email to people, which I think is really helpful for churches that are just like, we can't add one more service in the building. So that is available. So for this children's curriculum, typically when I write children's curriculum, I'm writing some creative retelling of the story, along with extension activities like crafts and games and books to read and songs to sing and reflection questions and such like that. But since we followed just sequentially Luke 1, 2, 3, we had all of these stories line up into one big story, basically. And so I wrote a skit for each week that then you can put together, and it becomes this pageant that's pictured here. So there's both weekly curriculum, and there's also a pageant that uses the same script, a little bit tweaked, and there's an original musical number in the middle of it, along with these characters. It really blew up, y'all. We have these characters that you can use as like stick puppets, and backdrops that you can trace or print out for your stick puppet theater. So lots of goodie in this one.
I like to say it's a choose your own adventure curriculum. So you can keep it really basic and it will be really meaningful, or you can go big and do a full production with also an original musical interlude that Anna wrote. So like it's really lovely. If you want to tell the full kind of Advent story leading into Christ's birth, it's a really wonderful option. Additionally, with our children's materials, we have some weekly worship bulletins. Hannah, do you want to speak to those really quick?
Sure. So another tie-in resource. So the banner design brings together some pieces from around the offerings within everything that we're bringing to this table. And this resource also ties things in. You'll recognize the characters. So Anna created the characters, and we've brought them into the children's bulletin so that there's a connection between their Sunday school class and their worship experience. So they're not exactly what you would see in Sunday school, but it's the same characters. And then inside the bulletin, there's some other activities that also are tying to the text for the day. And some of the prompts and focal points tie back to the children's Sunday school class. So it's really an amazing connection product from the classroom to the home, or from the Sunday school teacher to the parent. And as we know, bringing kids up in church, they need to connect on both sides. And it's really helpful when there's a carry through piece. So we're really excited to offer this.
We also have an advent calendar this year, an advent calendar that's designed for maybe like high school youth and adults. And it includes daily prompts for practicing joy in a weary world. And they're just really simple things like reading a poem, or there might be a journaling prompt, or go take a photo of something that brings you joy, or send a text to somebody that you're thinking of. And just really easy ways to practice joy every single day throughout the whole season. And so you could print that calendar and send it home with folks. We also have a digital version, so you could share it online. If I were you and I were using this, I would do both. Like I would send it home with folks and also have that reminder that pops up every day. And we also, I don't have the photo of it, but we do have a children's calendar as well that includes some really fun prompts to do with your family each day from December 1 through Christmas. And it also has some coloring where you find a shape in our logo and you color the shape in. And lastly, to round off the full bundle, we have the theme song, which we mentioned, and the lyrics are written by Sarah, and she's collaborated with her chapel church band at Fifth Avenue Presbyterian Church in New York City to create that song, and it's really lovely. So a lot of churches will recreate that song in their worship. So we have some lead sheets as well as a piano accompaniment. So you could sing it in worship if you'd like. And then we also have the full recording that you could just play. And we are producing a music video that we will share closer to the beginning of the season. And that will interweave the song with many of the visuals included in the series. All right. So part of our mission really, as I mentioned, is to create resources for spiritual nourishment, not just for the communities that you serve, but for you, the leaders and the clergy as well. And so we want to take some time to offer just a short segment in which you simply get to receive and experience a small taste of the materials through poetry and art. Many of you may feel like you're in go mode and getting ready for the season. Fall is such a busy time. It is also just the weight of the world is particularly heavy right now. And I think all of us feel that. And so we hope we can just take a few moments to slow down and to engage with some of these creative materials. So Sarah, I'd love if you would just open us with another poem, this one that you wrote for the series specifically. It's titled Wade In. And then we'll kick it over to Lauren, who will guide us in a short Visio Divina practice using some art that she created for the series.
Perfect. This is for the first week of Advent, and the sub-theme was We Acknowledge Our Weariness. Over time, wind and water will sand down the edges of a stone. For humans, our wind and water is the grief of the world. Stay here long enough, and pieces of you will be pressed upon by life's never-ending stream. It's enough to make you weary. It's enough to make you question. It's enough to make you quiet, and yet the stream continues. So do not be afraid to stand in that water. Wade in. Soak the hem of your jeans. Drip wet footprints through every room in your house. Let the water stains tell your story. And when your body grows weary of swimming, name the stream. Acknowledge your weariness. For eventually, you will pick flowers from the opposite bank. And over again, we'll tell this story. And over again, a weary world will rejoice.
Amen.
Ooh, I need a moment. That poem just really spoke to me in this moment. I hope it did for you too. So I'd like to invite you to join me in a brief Visio Divina practice using the image Comfort, O Comfort that I created inspired by Isaiah 40, 1 through 11. To begin, relax your body as best you can. Feel the weight of your body in your chair. Take a deep breath in and out. From this relaxed posture, I invite you to turn your gaze to the image as I offer you prompts for silent reflection. As you look at the art, take a few moments to notice all the details, paying attention to the colors, shapes, textures, and composition. Now take a closer look. What parts of the image are your eyes immediately drawn to? What parts of the image did you miss at first glance or quickly brush by? Take a few moments to look closer. And now pay attention to how you feel. What emotions emerge as you gaze upon this image? I want to share with you a brief excerpt from the artist statement for this piece. A shepherd is at once fierce and tender, willing to face the most dangerous of predators in the dead of night while warmly cradling the most vulnerable of the flock. In this image, the shepherd nurtures a lamb while leading the flock through the fields of tall grasses and flowers. The fuchsia flowers in the foreground are marjoram flowers that represent comfort and steadfastness of God's word, even in the midst of the leveling of the land. If you look closely, the shepherd's clothes have repeated medallions of simplified imagery of a straight highway in the wilderness. Within the stylized landscape, a voice proclaims the coming glory of God. I want to open up a brief time of response. I may need to enlist the help of the host because I'm unable to see comments from the attendees. But I'd like to open up a time to invite you to respond to this time that we had together. What do you see in this image? How does it make you feel? What were you thinking about as I guided you through the prompts? If you feel inspired to do so, please share in the chat.
How about we as a team respond to those prompts verbally, and folks can be typing in the chat as well. I don't know if any of us panelists can see the chat, unfortunately, so we will trust that your responses are coming through. But yeah, team, what did you see? What are you feeling?
I have
think
to say, like,
Davina, oh,
oh,
sorry. I
you
was just
go.
gonna say, I think Physio Divina is always such a calming and a centering experience and a spiritual practice that I'm always grateful for. And Lauren, I think the title of this piece is really appropriate because I felt comforted in looking in this and just diving into this this image. I felt comforted by the tall grass and by the tall mountains and by the stars in the night sky and by the embrace of the shepherd. So that was a gift.
I am seeing that someone said the chat is disabled, but that came through the Q&A, so maybe we could use the Q&A. I don't know. If you want to type what you're feeling or responding in the Q&A, maybe we'll be able to see it. I have to say that listening to Sarah's poem, entering into that time of Visio Divina was really powerful for me, because I was choking back tears, honestly, after Sarah read her poem. I've read it over and over. I formatted it, but like there's something about hearing it read that was really comforting to me and nurturing. And I feel like this image really, like, I felt like the little lamb being scooped up, and that's like, I feel like the feeling I want to have. I want to feel like God is scooping me up and scooping us all up.
Similarly, I've seen this image many times throughout proofreading and formatting and getting stuff up on the web. But this is the first time that I think I really noticed this little guy in the front who's like looking right at me. This little guy off to the side is like looking straight into my eyes very expectantly, and just like reminded me of, you know, the looks that pets have given me over the years of like, if they could telepathically tell me something, I know there'd be something that he's saying, just looking at me very expectantly. And I feel like it's this like little call to like, okay, you're gonna shepherd me.
I love to hear the interaction and the way that the creator is able to share this. And also, so Lauren and Sarah, it's always a treat to be on sessions like this with you. Thank you. I really appreciate the explanations of the patterns, and I always wonder about that with my own work, if it's helpful or not helpful to share how I was thinking about this or that pattern or the meaning. But hearing you talk a little bit about why you chose the plants and the images, it helps me get deeper into the image. I also just absolutely love that this is a woman represented as a shepherd, because I think it's the first time that I've ever seen a woman as one of these characters in the Bible.
Thank you. It looks like we have someone who shared that they were struck by the sheep looking directly at the viewer. They drew me in and held me, and I wanted to walk through those flowers. Thank you for sharing.
Margaret also says, I love the way the lines of the purple hills seem to be lifting the shepherd up. And that was kind of my meditation, is just this feeling of being held, and how even like the landscape itself is like holding up the sky, and just like everything. There's such a harmony in this piece, and with, I think the colors just elicit that feeling of calm that it's inspired by Isaiah's prophecy that starts, "Comfort, oh comfort my people," and it ends with this imagery. You didn't read the scripture. We didn't have time to read the scripture, but it ends with this imagery of a shepherd tending to the flock. And so I love that feeling of comfort and being held. Well, friends, we have just 5 minutes left. And so it seems like the Q&A box is working for us. I'm sorry that the chat was disabled. We do like to try to connect with you, but if there are any remaining thoughts, either on the art, or if you have any questions now about any of the Advent resources or just anything that we do, now is the time that we can respond to some of those questions. It may take a moment, especially if you're joining while you're on the go. You may not be able to type a question, which is understandable. But do we have any closing thoughts, you all, about the series? Anything else that you feel like is really important to share?
I
think-
just really appreciate, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I hope that if you're utilizing these resources, that they're life-giving to you as well. I find that I spend so much time in the kind of the weeds of formatting and putting the resources together, that getting to come back to moments like this and just sitting with the resources, they're so generative in a way that like we could never have planned ourselves. And so we're so grateful for the way the Spirit moves through this work and how it inspires you all and the things that you create and make that are greater than the sum of the parts. So yeah, just grateful.
Also, really, it felt poignant when we were planning this, and has only felt more poignant as this bundle goes out into the world. Just this sense of weariness over all these years of through the pandemic and difficult world and national interactions and political situations, wars and pain. So I'm really thankful.
We are so thankful to Lyle, Hannah, Sarah, and Lauren and Anna for presenting this wonderful webinar today. Thank you so very much. And Lyle, do you want to end with that music? And then
We can, yeah. It is 7 minutes long, so we'll go a few minutes past 2. But if folks want to hang on, I would be glad to share it. It's a lovely song that will kind of stay with you through the day, I think. Would you like to close that way?
yeah, yes. Here's another I was just reading the question and answer there. It says, love it, trying to stay focused on the rest of my current series, even through How Can a Weary World Rejoice? Calls to me. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's going to cut off right at 2. So
okay.
I think you can go ahead and play whatever, and I think then this webinar ends right at 2.
All right.
Thank
We
you
won't
so
have
much.
we won't have a lovely fade out, but we'll play it all the same.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoy the song.
Emmanuel, we're waiting here. We hold on to hope despite our fears. Emmanuel, we're waiting here for your promised day, where joy will stay. We can hold grief in both our hands. Even still, our feet know how to dance. Even on the longest night, we will see the stars shining bright. joy to be a force for good. We'll sing it true. Oh, when the world is where it's been, Emmanuel will reach us in. We'll sing for you. For all it takes is just one voice, for joy to be a force for good. We'll sing it true. Emmanuel, the night